What happens when humanity dares to challenge the frozen throne of the galaxy's most feared council? High above the jagged peaks of Aerosol, wind-whipped snow danced like ghostly dancers across the sky. The cargo freighter Astra's Hope leaned precariously against a jagged spire of ice, its hull groaning under the weight of meteor-cold temperatures. Captain Mira Chen tightened her grip on a frost-slicked beam, her breath steaming in the thin air. Below her, the rest of her crew fought through howling gusts to mend the vessel's shattered dorsal plating. Lieutenant Eric Volan stood a few feet away, handing Mira reinforced alloy panels. He cracked a wry smile beneath his helmet's frosted visor. "You know, Captain," he called out, voice crackling over the comm link, "I never thought my dream assignment would end in shivering on an ice planet." His boots slipped on a layer of ice, and Mira reached out, steadying him as he nearly fell headfirst into a drift. "Just glue the panel before we both become frozen statues," Mira retorted, tapping at the rivet console. Sparks leaped and hissed as Eric secured the final bolt. Even in this desperate moment, their quiet banter felt like a lifeline, proof that humanity's spirit could burn bright, even in the coldest void. A distant rumble rolled across the glacier, and every crew member froze. Below them, jagged clouds parted to reveal the Council's convoy. Sleek hoverpods carved from dark alloys, their cobalt lights cutting swaths through the swirling white. The Deathworld Council would arrive in minutes, their shock troopers ready to enforce ice-cold decrees against any who dared trespass. Mira tapped her wrist console, pulling up a real-time feed of the freighter's damaged engines. "We're 90 seconds from jump readiness," she muttered. Sweat, or was it condensation, beaded on her brow beneath the helmet. Just enough time to slip inside the Council's border defenses. As the hoverpods descended, their engines thrummed like hungry beasts. Mira and Eric shared a determined glance. She could feel her heart beating beneath layers of insulated armor. Every beat reminded her of the countless worlds that lived under Council tyranny, of the human children who grew up hearing legends of alien cruelty. If humanity had any hope of being more than subjugated scavengers, they needed to prove they could outwit the galaxy's self-appointed judges. Sparks crackled along the freighter's damaged plating. Mira lowered her voice. "Eric, when we breach the Council's perimeter, you disable their sentinel drones. I'll lead us through the ice tunnel access point. Understand?" "Crystal clear," Eric replied, sliding a compact EMP emitter into his pocket. His calm confidence steadied Mira's racing mind. She allowed herself a brief moment to remember why she had signed on for this suicide mission. The chance to show that human cunning could blink out centuries of alien superiority. Far below, the first Council troopers disembarked, their armor gleaming like shards of obsidian. Mira took a deep breath of the frigid air. Each exhale hung in the sky like a promise. Stepping to the edge of the freighter's open hatch, she beckoned her team with a curt nod. Together, they would plunge into the storm and face whatever terrors the Deathworld Council waited to unleash. And so began humanity's boldest gamble, one that would determine whether they would forever be slaves of the frozen throne or the architects of a new era among the stars. Mira's boots crunched against the hard-packed snow as she led her team down the narrow ice tunnel. The walls glimmered with trapped starlight, fracturing into 1,000 tiny rainbows. Each footstep echoed like a drumbeat in the frozen silence. Behind her, Eric carried the EMP emitter, his eyes scanning for the sentinel drones they expected to guard the inner sanctum. The tunnel spat them out onto a wide ice plain. Towering monoliths of carved crystal rose into the sky, forming the Council's outer gate. 2 sentinel drones, tall as humans and sleek as liquid metal, hovered beside the entrance. Their glowing optic cores swept back and forth, uncovering any heat signatures. Mira crouched behind a fallen shard of ice. "Remember the plan," she whispered. "Eric, this is your moment." Without a word, Eric slipped forward, his steps muffled by the snow. He pressed the EMP emitter against the first drone's side. A low pulse vibrated through the air. The drone's lights flickered, then died. Its twin glided closer, sensing the anomaly. Eric lunged, slamming the emitter into its circuitry. Sparks burst, and the drone collapsed, wings folding like broken sails. Mira exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Could work," she murmured. "Let's move." They dashed across the plain toward the icebound gate. The heavy doors glowed with engraved runes of the Ilari language. Mira tapped a stolen council keycard against the reader. It shimmered, then clicked open. The doors swung inward, revealing a grand hall carved from solid sapphire. Massive pillars held up a ceiling draped in frozen stalactites. Inside, the temperature dropped even further. Frost coated every surface. Mira's breath formed small clouds in the dim blue light. Crew members fanned out, studying the carved murals that depicted ancient victories of the Deathworld Council. Each scene portrayed the Ilari as invincible conquerors. Cold fear tried to settle in Mira's chest, but she pushed it aside. Suddenly, the soft hum of energy fields filled the hall. A force barrier arose at the far end, sealing the entrance behind them. Eric's comm crackled. "We've got company. Patrol drones inbound." Mira's heart pounded. "Take cover," she ordered. Behind a crystal pillar, she watched as two sleek patrol drones glided into view. Their cobalt eyes locked onto her group. Eric tapped his wrist console. "I can hack their targeting systems, but it'll take 10 seconds. He began typing commands at lightning speed. Mira scanned for an escape route. Her eyes landed on a narrow service corridor to their left, marked by a flickering panel. If the drones didn't break through soon, they'd be trapped. She raised her rifle, ready to buy Eric the precious moments he needed. A pulse of light shot from one drone, striking the pillar beside Mira. Ice shards exploded outward, showering her armor. She fired back, her laser bolts sizzling through the air. The beam struck the drone's housing, but it shrugged off the damage. "Almost there," Eric muttered. His fingers flew across the keys. Then he pressed the enter command. The drone's optic cores flickered, then switched to friendly identification. "They're on our side," Eric announced. The drones hummed, then pivoted away from the group. Mira lowered her rifle in relief. Good thinking. She nudged her crew forward toward the service corridor. "Let's find that archive room. We don't have much time." As they slipped into the narrow passage, the main hall's great doors began to grind open again. Snow gusted in, carrying the howl of approaching Ilari guards. Mira's jaw tightened. Ahead lay the heart of the Council's secrets, and the next step in humanity's greatest gamble. As the team slipped through the narrow service corridor, the roar of engines thundered behind them. When they burst out onto the crystal plain, the sky above had darkened with Council hoverpods, each the size of a small house. Their sleek hulls gleamed cobalt in the dying light, and from their underbellies, shock troopers rappelled down on energy cables. Mira Chen's heart pounded as she raised her rifle, scanning the horizon for the first sign of movement. The wind shrieked across the plain, carrying shards of ice that cut like glass. Through the storm, the troopers dropped in precise formations, their armor gleaming black and blue. They fanned out across the ice, weapons trained on every shadow. "Hold your ground," Mira called, her voice steady despite the cold biting at her lungs. She tapped her comm unit. "Eric, deploy the nets when I give the signal." Eric Volan nodded from beside her, his fingers already flicking switches on the portable net launcher. Beside him, Engineer Sulin and Medic Jara crouched behind a crystalline outcrop, each ready for what came next. A high-pitched whistle cut through the wind, an order from the Council's command drone overhead. Then, with a synchronized grace that belied their size, the troopers advanced. Their plasma carbines glowed as they fired, sending red beams streaking across the ice. Sparks erupted where bolts met alloy plating, shattering ice crystals into glittering fragments. Mira ducked behind a fractured pillar of glass-like ice. She counted to 3, breath clouding her view, then sprang up. "Now, Eric." With a satisfying hum, the net launcher locked on. Eric squeezed the trigger, and 2 great nets of conductive fibers burst forth. They sailed through the storm, wrapping around the legs of the nearest trooper mech as it strode forward. The nets glowed briefly, then discharged a surge of electricity. The mech shuddered and collapsed, its servos locking in place. A cheer rose from the human crew, but it died quickly as more mechs lumbered into view. These behemoths moved with measured steps, shielded against the storm. Mira took a deep breath, steadied her aim, and fired at their exposed joints. Her laser bolt fizzed against the mech's knee, leaving a glowing scorch mark. It staggered but did not fall. "Move to the ridge," Mira yelled. "We need higher ground." The crew sprinted across the plain, sliding over slick ice but pressing on. Council troopers poured plasma fire after them, and the night lit up with streaks of red and gold. Jara returned fire, her shots precise, and Sulin lobbed small EMP grenades. Each burst sent ripples of energy through the snow, temporarily disabling incoming reinforcements. Reaching the ridge, Mira peered out over the battlefield. The freighter's broken silhouette lay half buried in a drift. Beyond it, more hoverpods clung like barnacles to the sky. She could see the Council's command drone hovering, its lens sweeping for heat signatures. Everyone ready. She panted, wiping frost from her visor. Around her, Eric, Sulin, and Jara checked their gear. They nodded, breaths steaming like specters. Mira tightened her grip on the rifle. "This is our chance. We show them what humans can do." With a shared glance, they took aim and began to fire. One by one, they targeted the drone's support cables. Sparks flew as each bolt found its mark, and the drone shuddered. As it fell, the hoverpods lost their coordinated pattern, wobbling in the storm. Encouraged, the crew pressed forward down the ridge. Their footsteps were urgent now, filled with purpose. Every blast of their weapons sang a message. Humanity would no longer cower in the cold. They would stand, fight, and carve their own place in the stars. Mira pressed onward down the ridge, snow crunching beneath her boots. The storm's fury seemed to bow before their advance. As the Council's drone crashed in a bloom of icy sparks, the hoverpods faltered and retreated. Below them, the entrance to the stronghold gaped like a wound in the glacier. "Cover me," Mira whispered, sliding through the shattered portal doors. Inside, the air was still and cold, but the walls glowed with pale sapphire light. She motioned for Eric and the others to follow, each step echoing in the cavernous hall. At its center stood a circular dais, its surface etched with spiraling runes. Sulin and Jara moved to secure the perimeter while Mira and Eric approached the dais. "This is it," Mira said, running gloved fingers over the carved symbols. "The vault of frozen secrets." Her voice sounded distant, as if swallowed by the ice. Eric produced a handheld decryptor, a small device built from scavenged human parts and Elari circuitry. He connected it to a port hidden beneath a rune that pulsed gently. The device hummed, and glyphs of light scrolled across its display. Mira watched the glyphs blur into star charts and constellation maps. "These charts show the portal's location," she translated aloud. "Under the Frostfire crater, deep in the northern basin." Eric's brow furrowed. "And this prophecy," he added, tapping on a line of glowing script. "It calls the portal the Moral Flame. It says, when frozen hearts ignite, the throne shall fall to moral hands." Mira's breath caught. "It sounds like they feared us." She glanced at Eric. Their eyes met through glossy visors, and for a moment, the mission's danger faded behind the spark between them. A distant rumble shook the vault. Sulin's voice crackled over the comlink. "Elari reinforcements are on the move. We've got less than 2 minutes before they breach the gates." Mira nodded grimly. "Then we move fast." She pressed a control panel beside the dais. The floor shuddered and slid open, revealing a spiral staircase carved into the ice. One by one, the team descended. The walls of the shaft glistened with crystallized frost, reflecting their headlamps in fractal patterns. Down below, a faint orange glow pulsed, as if the mountain itself had a beating heart. At the bottom, they stepped into a vast cavern filled with steam vents and molten rock flowing beneath thin sheets of ice. In the center floated a small orb of living fire, its flames dancing in defiance of the cold. Mira approached it slowly. "The mortal flame," she breathed. Her gloved hand hovered over the orb's surface. The heat washed over her suit, warm and alive. She felt a surge of energy pulse through her fingertips as she lifted the orb from its icy cradle. Behind her, Eric slipped off his pack, preparing to secure the artifact. "Got it," he murmured, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. He placed a protective field around the orb so they could transport it. A distant alarm sounded, its klaxon echoing through the tunnels. Mira tightened her grip on the orb. "We have what we came for," she said, determination steelier than the ice around them. "Now let's show the Council why they should fear human hearts." Together, they turned and began the climb back toward the surface, the mortal flame blazing in their hands and lighting the way to humanity's next victory. Mira's boots slipped on melting ice as she and her team began the steep climb back through the frostbound stairwell. The mortal flame's heat seeped through her gloves, casting warm flickers on the curved walls. Behind her, Eric carried the protective field generator, its blue glow dancing across his helmet. Steam hissed from vents in the walls, mixing with their ragged breaths into a heavy mist. Halfway up, the quake alarms grew louder. The Council's ice sentinels, towering golems of carved frost, rumbled into view at the top of the stairs. Their hollow eyes burned with pale light as they lumbered forward, eager to defend the vault. Mira steadied her rifle, the artifact's warmth at her side giving her courage. "Hold them here," she whispered to Sulin and Jara. As the golems advanced, Sulin lobbed an EMP grenade. It detonated at their feet in a spark of white electricity. The Frost warriors shuddered, their joints locking for a moment before they resumed their march, now slower and erratic. Jara fired her laser pistol at the nearest golem's core, the beam carving through enchanted ice. A crystalline fragment exploded, bringing the giant crashing down in a cascade of shards. Mira seized the moment. "This way," she called, leading the team into a side tunnel marked by ancient glyphs. The narrow passage curved upward, and the heat of the flame made the ice drip overhead. Each drop hissed to steam as it fell. Eric closed the protective field generator around the orb, its shield repelling frost and sparks alike. They emerged onto a suspended catwalk overlooking the vault chamber. Below them, more sentinels rose from the ice floor, and hovering pods began to seal off their exit. Mira's heart thudded. "We're out of time," she said, voice firm. "We need a new route." Sulin studied a holo projection on his wrist. "There's an old maintenance hatch on the north wall. It leads to an external conduit." He pointed through a frosted window where thick pipes snaked along the ice walls. "If we can get across that ledge, we can reach the freighter landing pad." Eric nodded. "I'll keep the flame stable," he said. He adjusted the generator's settings, and the flame glowed brighter, its warmth pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Let's move." One by one they crossed the catwalk, careful to avoid cracks in the brittle ice. As Mira stepped onto the outer ledge, the wind howled, threatening to unbalance her. She clutched the railing, the mortal flame's heat chasing away the chill in her bones. The pipes ahead looked slick, but Sulin went first, his engineer's confidence steadying the group. When they reached the maintenance hatch, Eric shoved it open. A blast of frozen air rushed in, but the flame's shield held firm. They dropped down into a narrow conduit lined with power cables. Sparks flickered along the walls as they hurried through the claustrophobic tunnel. At the end, the conduit opened onto a snowy plateau. The silhouette of Astra's Hope loomed against the stormy sky. Its landing pad lights blinked like beacons. Council hoverpods swirled above, but the freighter's damaged engines sputtered to life. Mira jogged forward, her gloves tingling with the flame's power. As they boarded, Eric set the protective generator into the cargo hold. The crew scrambled to seal the hatch. Outside, the sentinels smashed against the freighter's reinforced hull, but the mortal flame's warmth seemed to push them back. With a thunderous roar, the engines engaged. The freighter lifted off, ice spray trailing like stardust. Mira let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Through the cockpit viewport, she watched the Deathworld Council's stronghold shrink beneath them. The mortal flame pulsed in her hands, a beacon of a new dawn for humanity. And as Astra's hope soared free of the glacier's grip, every heart on board knew they had changed the galaxy forever. Mira Chen braced herself as Astra's hope shuddered on liftoff. Thick ice rained against the reinforced viewport, then fell away as the freighter climbed into the stormy sky. Behind them, the Deathworld Council's stronghold gleamed like a jagged crown of ice. Its towers smoked and crumbled from the energy of the mortal flame. In the cockpit, Eric Volan monitored the engines. "We've got incoming," he warned, pointing to a cluster of Council warships warping into the planet's upper atmosphere. Their dark hulls blocked out the stars, and their cannons glinted with deadly promise. Mira tightened her grip on the controls. "Hold us steady," she told the helmsman. "We need to clear the exosphere before they open fire." The freighter lurched as ion thrusters roared. Outside, the sky shifted from pale blue to the black velvet of space. The atmosphere's edge crackled with electric light. Mira exhaled, her breath calm despite the danger. "We're clear," she said. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." Below, the Council ships opened fire. Beams of concentrated plasma pierced the thinning sky, slamming into the freighter's shields. Alarms blared and red lights flashed across the console. Sparks danced along the overhead panels. "Shields at 40%, Engineer Sulin reported from his station. "If we take another hit, we could lose critical systems." Mira nodded, eyes locked on the targeting display. She banked the freighter hard to the left. The plasma bolts grazed past, scorching the hull. "Battery, charge the pulse cannon," she ordered. "Let's give them something to think about." Jara, the medic turned weapons officer for this section, activated the ship's side-mounted cannon. A deep hum filled the cockpit. "Pulse cannon online," she called. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. A blazing orb of energy shot out, cutting across the void. It struck the lead warship, ripping through its outer plating in a burst of blue-white fire. The ship shuddered, then spun out of formation, trailing smoke. "Nice shot," Eric grinned even as he scanned for more threats. But the Council responded in force. Dozens of fighter drones swarmed around Astra's Hope like angry hornets. Their sleek frames darted in formation, each armed with micro-missiles. One drone broke off and dove toward the freighter's aft engines. "Evasive action," Mira shouted. She flipped a switch, and the ship rolled end over end. The drone overshot, but another dove in its place. Jara pivoted the pulse cannon and unleashed a salvo, vaporizing the second drone in a flash of light. Below in the cargo hold, the mortal flame glowed warmly inside its protective field. Each flicker of flame seemed to pulse in time with the freighter's rumbling hull. Sulin studied the artifact's energy readings. "The flame's power is stable," he reported. "It's still giving off more heat than our reactors." Mira caught his eye. "Good. We'll need every ounce of that warmth." She turned her attention back to the battle. "Eric, plot a course to the nearest jump gate. Full throttle." Eric tapped coordinates into the nav console. "Jump gate 18.3 light-years away. We'll need to punch through 50% more shields, then pray the gate accepts our signature." Mira nodded. "Then let's make it count." The freighter surged forward, shielding crackling with energy. Plasma bolts traced trails through the void, and the pulse cannon roared in defiance. As Astra's Hope raced toward freedom, every soul aboard knew their gamble had only just begun, and that, with the mortal flame in hand, humanity might finally claim its place among the stars. Mira watched the jump gate loom ahead like a silent sentinel. Its arching frame pulsed with pale green light, sending ripples of energy across the void. The freighter's shields flickered under incoming fire from the last Council drone fighters. Below her, the mortal flame glowed warmly in its containment field, a living heart amid the cold metal. 5 seconds to gate entry, Eric called from the navigation console, fingers flying over the controls. His voice held a tense excitement. "But we're dropping shields to punch through." Mira nodded. "Do it." She gripped the armrests as the freighter surged forward. The passage between the floating pylons narrowed, and the starry void outside compressed into bright streaks of light. Suddenly, A pulse of energy slammed into the ship's aft. The hull lurched. Warning klaxons blared. "They've locked a tractor beam on us," Sulin shouted from engineering. "We're losing velocity." Mira's heart thumped. She slammed her hand on the helm override. "Full reverse thrusters. Divert all power to engines." The freighter's engines roared, flames spitting into space as they strained against the tractor beam. Outside, two slender warships pulled alongside, cutting off their path. Plasma bolts snapped through the gap, striking the shield generator. Sparks erupted on the control panel. Jera dove onto the console to reroute circuits. "I've got it," she gasped. "Shields are back up to 60%. "Could work," Mira said. She angled the freighter slightly, presenting its reinforced side to the tractor beam. "Break their lock." Eric engaged a sequence. Impulse thrusters on the starboard port. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The ship jolted as bursts of thrust spat plasma. The tractor beam faltered, then released its grip. Mira steered directly at the jump gate. As they passed the pylons, the gate's hum deepened. A shimmering ring of energy formed before them. Mira checked the countdown display. 2 seconds. "Hold steady," she whispered. The freighter slid into the ring. Light cascaded across the bridge in prismatic waves. Mira felt her stomach drop as every star outside warped into a brilliant tunnel. The mortal flame's glow intensified, its warmth suffusing the hull. It felt like hope itself burning within their ship. Then silence. The ring collapsed behind them, and the freighter drifted in a new star system. Outside the viewport, alien worlds spun in the distance. Deep purples and silver clouds marked a nebula far more beautiful than any map had shown. Eric exhaled. "We made it." Mira let out her breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Status?" "Shields at 80%. Jera reported, straightening up. "Engines and weapons are fully functional." Sulin leaned over the console, eyes wide. "And the moral flame?" Its energy signature just shifted. It sensed with the jump drive. Mira's heart skipped. "Meaning?" "It's amplifying the gate's power," he said quietly. "We arrived faster than physics should allow." Eric smiled, admiration in his eyes. "Human ingenuity. And that artifact." He glanced at Mira. For a moment, they shared a look of wonder. And something more profound, a bond forged in ice and fire. Beyond the freighter, a planet larger than any in their old charts loomed. Its surface crackled with turquoise storms and glowing veins of molten rock. Mira felt a thrill. This was where they would challenge the Deathworld Council's core forces and deliver the mortal flame to the heart of their power. She placed a hand on the helm. "Plot a course to the planet's surface. Prepare for descent." As Astra's hope turned toward its next horizon, every crew member knew their gamble had paid off, not just in survival, but in reshaping the galaxy's destiny. And with the mortal flame guiding them, humanity's true ascent had only just begun. Mira watched the storm-shrouded planet grow larger in the viewport. Jagged lightning danced across its dark clouds, and flashes of molten lava glowed through cracks in the atmosphere. Her heart pounded with excitement and fear. Below, Eric adjusted the descent thrusters. "Brace for turbulence," he warned, voice calm over the roar of wind. "Atmospheric entry will be rough." Mira tapped her helm controls. "I know, keep us steady." She gripped the armrests as Astra's hope plunged into thick layers of storm. Outside, rain lashed the hull, turning to steam where it met superheated plating. The ship shook violently, metal groaning under pressure. In the co-pilot's seat, Jera gripped her console. "Sensors show a safe landing zone near the lava fields," she reported. "But we'll need to avoid the plasma storms." Sulin studied the readings on his wrist display. "Those storms shift fast. I recommend landing on that ridge." He pointed to a narrow plateau glowing red. "We can secure the flame there and then move in." Mira nodded. "Do it." She watched as Eric lined up the freighter's descent. The radar flickered with nearby storm cells. One bolt of plasma struck the ship's port side, sending shards of insulation into the cabin. Sparks rained from the overhead panels. Jera swore under her breath and rerouted power to life support. Sulin moved to reinforce the damaged conduit. Mira kept her eyes on the viewports. "Just a little further," she murmured. Finally, the hull settled against the rocky ridge with a heavy thud. The shaking eased. Outside, the sky was a roiling mix of crimson lightning and ash. The freighter's engines hissed as they vented excess heat. Mira exhaled and rose from her seat. "All right, team," she called. "Time to move." Eric slipped the protective generator from the cargo hold and carried it toward the hatch. The mortal flame glowed warmly inside its containment field, its orange light cutting through the gloom. They stepped onto the ridge, boots crunching on ash and rock. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of sulfur. Far below, rivers of lava coursed through a cracked valley. A distant rumble hinted at volcanic activity. Mira scanned the horizon. According to the star charts, the Council's fortress lies on the other side of that valley. She pointed toward a black spire jutting from the planet's surface. "We need to cross that lava field and reach the northern cliffs." Sulin tapped his wrist. "There's an abandoned maintenance tunnel that runs beneath the valley. It should get us close to the fortress base without exposure to the storms." "Good," Mira said. She glanced at Eric. "Let's go." They carefully descended the ridge, following Sulin's whole map. The ground was hot underfoot, and the glow from the lava stained their visor lenses red. Smoke curled around their ankles, and every breath tasted of ash. As they approached the tunnel entrance, hidden behind a collapsed archway, Jera paused. "Listen." Mira tilted her head. Over the growl of the wind and the distant thunder, she heard soft voices. "Ellery patrols." Two figures, armed and moving cautiously, stood near the tunnel's mouth. Their obsidian armor gleamed in the lava light. Mira's chest tightened. If they were discovered now, the mission would fail. She raised her hand, signaling the team to halt. "We need a distraction," she whispered. Eric glanced at the mortal flame. Its glow pulsed gently, as if urging action. He set down the generator and took a handful of small rocks. "Watch and follow my lead," he said quietly. He tossed a rock toward a distant boulder. It struck with a sharp crack. The patrol's head snapped toward the sound. Mira pressed her finger to her lips. As the Elari turned away, she motioned her crew forward. Together, they slipped into the shadows of the tunnel, hearts pounding, fate balanced on the edge of discovery.